Hello, my name is Kevin Pask, and I was invited to give this year's Shakespeare birthday lecture at the Atwater Library, and that was before the Atwater Library, along with most of everything else, was closed. So the lecture is postponed, and I'm here in some virtual format to say a few words about Shakespeare and in the context of COVID pandemic, and to say a little bit about what I might be talking about for next year. So I will do both of those things relatively quickly. And first of all, I'll just share a screen with you, um, which is first instance an image from Shakespeare's birth year, 1564. And something that connects us to Shakespeare's birthday, but also to something else that was happening in Stratford in 1564, which is shortly after Shakespeare's birth in April. The register in his parish church has an entry, simply reads in Latin, "Hic incipit pestis." Here begins the plague. This after the registration of a death, the first one attributed to the bubonic plague in the parish. Uh, that would be a particularly disastrous episode of the plague in the Midlands of England, including Stratford-upon-Avon. It's thought that something like 1/7 of the population of Stratford died during the bubonic plague episode of 1564, sparing, however, the very young William Shakespeare, who was less than 3 months old when the plague began its course in Stratford-upon-Avon. It would not be the last time that Shakespeare came into close contact with episodes of the plague. There were several during his working career in London, several, by the way, which also halted theatrical productions, and which often seems to have quite possibly turned Shakespeare to, for example, writing poetry or to finishing poetic projects during periods of essentially, like our own experience now, sheltering in place. And I want to turn in order to conclude this very short presentation, to another image, which is, I think, a somewhat perhaps more delightful, happier image, and looking forward to my own talk, which I think will be next year in April, on Shakespeare and fairies, in particular what was sometimes called the fairy way of writing or fantasy. Here's an image of the fairies from Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. And one of the things that's kind of striking about this image is the simple, I think for us now, one of the striking things about this image is just the simple fact that here are these supernatural creatures who are very distinctly not keeping their social distance from one another. There's a kind of emphasis in Blake's image. This is, by the way, almost 200 years after Shakespeare's play, so it's a much later sort of version of Shakespeare's characters, is the kind of close proximity that these characters are keeping to one another, their physical contact, their contact with the natural world in various parts of the image, the way in which the headgear of the fairies is associating them with the natural world, a more physically proximate, a more proximate to the natural world version of Shakespeare, which is perhaps something that we can look forward to in the future, and something that I hope to have a chance to talk to you about next year. So in the meantime, stay well, stay healthy, and bye for now.